Hello. Mini Jerome out there, like before we're even ready for him, he's out there saying, "Here we go."
Every time.
I know.
Every time.
All right. So, what is happening with you guys?
Well, it is the Spooktacular week here on Containers from the Couch, and
I'm scared.
Oh, I mean, your tweet was scary.
Yeah, the tweet was definitely scary.
Yeah, that actually was scary. If I saw that happen in real life, I would run, just as far as I could, which isn't that far, but hopefully far enough.
But here's the deal. If that happens in real life, it doesn't matter how fast you can run. You're doomed. That thing's catching you.
If she can go downstairs, what do you call that when you bend over backwards?
My kids do that. I forget what it's called, the bridge or something.
Yeah, and can like go downstairs that way. She'll definitely be able to catch me in a race. So, because I'm not that fast.
Yeah.
Or at all fast, actually. So
it doesn't matter. You're doomed regardless.
Hey, what are we talking about? If for those that didn't see my tweet, while Adam grooms himself,
hair's popping out. I'm just trying to clean my act up.
So now we all know where Adam looks on the screen. That's awesome. All right. So we were talking about a tweet that I sent out, but more importantly, I sent that out strategically. Not only did I want to alert people to the fact that, we're going to have this show and it's going to be awesome, but I also included a hashtag in it, AWS Copilot, because why did I do that, Adam?
Yes. So we have created, we being the Copilot team and me offering a little bit of help, we have created basically a really cool project that by the end of the show Wednesday, we will have a front end that's going to show anyone who's tweeted with the hashtag AWS Copilot. We're going to count all the emojis that you tweet with that hashtag, and we're going to display the winning emoji. So whichever emoji is used the most, and we'll rank them in order. So
that's awesome.
If you have Twitter, and now's a good time to tweet, hashtag AWS Copilot, and then whatever, spooky emojis you want. I think are we just going with spooky emojis or all emojis? I'm not sure.
All emojis work, but we should definitely do spooky.
Yeah. We should probably filter out poop too.
No, I mean, it's okay.
I'm just worried that it's just always the automatic winner. So
it's hard to beat the poop emoji. That's true.
It really is pretty great.
Hopefully it's not for the tool itself, but
Yes, it definitely is not. So maybe we should talk about what is Copilot and who is FA.
Yes.
Right?
FA, you get to do both of those things. Go.
Nice.
Sure. I can introduce myself first. So I'm FA. I'm an engineer on the Copilot team. If you tuned in yesterday, I'm on the same team as Austin. And I've been working on Copilot for a year now. Wow. And it's been a year since we started the early phase of development for Copilot. And what is Copilot? Copilot is an open source command line interface that helps developers. It makes it super easy for developers to build, release, and operate containerized applications on AWS. And what do we mean? By build, what we really mean is that if you have an existing Docker file or an existing already a container image, we'll make that super easy for you to get started on AWS. We'll deploy it, create all the necessary infrastructure for you. So you'll say, hey, I want a load balance web service. And Adam showed yesterday, I want a scheduled job. And then we'll create all the necessary AWS primitives just from these two inputs. By release, what we mean is that, hey, we want to make it super easy for you to create a code pipeline. We don't want to just do hey, you can release to a test environment, but if you want to release to a production environment, glue the two together with a pipeline, you can do that. And by operate, we'll see like today, CLI, with the CLI, you can do like operational commands. So you will be able to type service logs and view your logs directly from the terminal, service status to see the health of your service. So that's what Copilot does.
That's so cool. So, we've had Copilot on the show a few times, trying to show off how easy it is. One of the things that we wanted to do this go around was feature some of the new features of Copilot. Are we calling it 0.5 or the Copilot 5 release, or I don't know, the new release of Copilot? There's a lot of functionality added to it recently, and one of the things I had a friend actually reach out to me asking, how can I just run a job on a serverless container? And so I pointed him to Copilot, and this was before the latest release. And he said, no, not a service, just a job. And then like the very next day, the Copilot team releases 0.5, and it has scheduled job functionality. And I hope
you took credit for that.
I did. In a way, I kind of did. I just actually said, "What are you talking about?" and resent him the same link with a link to the docs, explaining what you have to do.
That's just as good, by the way. Just as good. Just basically claiming as if it's always been there. And you must be crazy. So, either approach, I approve.
So one of the great things about Copilot is that it does kind of abstract you away from having to build up all of your infrastructure and understand how it all has to fit together. Copilot just comes with built-in opinion on, like this is the best way to do things, or this is the AWS way. Build a VPC. How do I build my subnets? And what should I open up in my security group? Copilot just figures all that out for you and sets it all up for you. So, and
it tags everything for you.
Oh,
that's
interesting.
A big one.
Yeah. Tags are important. If you don't know about AWS infrastructure, you may not realize tags are important. But if, a year down the road, you're like, what do I have running? Tags are going to be super important for you to easily identify what goes with what service. So that's a very good point.
Yeah, and then speaking of cost, like with tags, Copilot is also trying to balance out. We create things that are with best practices by default, but we want to make it cheap for customers, right? So for an example of this, that what we do in Copilot is that by default, instead of creating a NAT gateway for your services, we'll just place them in the public subnet, but they'll be secure. And with this way, you'll be able to save a lot of money.
And I love that. That's something that over time I've come around on. I grew up in a traditional data center environment before the cloud. I'm that old, I guess. And so I'm used to thinking in terms of like public subnet, private subnet, and this is where you run all of your work. And I think now we have such a history of reference to look back on and see that you can be just as safe in a public subnet with the proper security settings built around it. And with Copilot being able to manage that for you and build that for you, then I can be pretty confident running my workloads in one of those subnets, and then I don't have to pay for something like a NAT gateway. So I get even simpler infrastructure, even simpler layout, and still just as secure. Love it.
What do you say we just go right into the app?
I think that's a good idea. All right.
So I think the first thing I want to do is just recap what we did yesterday and then talk through the app. So we have our application, which contains basically 3 functions here. One is our Twitter scraper, which is a scheduled job, which I'm going to redeploy today. 2 is our API service, which our API service is what's going to ingest those tweets from the Twitter scraper job. And then, of course, we have a front end, which we talked about to visualize all this beautiful stuff. So let's actually just go back to, I love oh boy. All right, let's go back here. I meant to ask to get that console timeout up. Austin, if you're watching, can you do that really quick?
This is what it's like to program at Amazon, by the way.
So, okay, so first I have both repos cloned. I'm going to go back to the Twitter scraper. And the reason I'm going to redeploy it is I want to start fresh. And what we're going to do is with Copilot, there's the concept of add-ons. And so yesterday, we just deployed our Twitter scraper job, which was just pulling in tweets, but it had no way of checkpointing the last tweet that it referenced. So we didn't just keep repeating the same data, right? So now what I want to do is my code has functionality to talk with SSM, parameter store. So it's just a simple key value store. And what it's going to do is at the end of the run, it's going to post the last tweet ID. And then the next time the job runs, it's going to reference that tweet ID as the starting point. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
So to get additional resources created with Copilot, so you may get to a point where you're like, okay, now I need a database. I need something that I can't necessarily create within the Copilot CLI itself. And that's where add-ons come into play. So if I go just really quick, I want to show you in my Copilot job name directory, there's an add-ons folder. And there is where I just have my SSM CloudFormation. So I can express additional resources that I need through Copilot via CloudFormation templates. So all I've done here is I'm just creating an SSM parameter, which is just going off of environment, which is passed as a parameter from Copilot to my CloudFormation template, and just naming the parameter. And then, of course, I need to have an IAM policy. So there's two things here that I'm going to point out that are just super neat. This is all, to me, kind of, basic stuff. But the outputs. So there's two things here. One is the checkpoint parameter name. This is going to become an environment variable when my task gets deployed. So now I can just reference this checkpoint parameter name as an environment variable, which is kind of cool. Like I didn't have to do anything. It's just there for me.
So there's a couple of things happening here that I think is super thoughtful. One is you still have the ability to write CloudFormation for the custom resources, like you're pointing out. But two, you don't have to write all the CloudFormation. You're only writing, what do you have here, like 3 stanzas, that describe what it is that you need. I guess 2, actually. Yeah. And then your output stanza. And then, like you said, like you're pointing out, to take, just to be knowledgeable enough about the way microservices work and containers work, and just know that if you're outputting this, there's bound to be a reason for it. So turn it into an environment variable so that the application can use it. I mean, that's brilliant, and it's simple all at the same time.
Yeah, it's just thoughtful. I know it sounds silly, but it really is thoughtful. And then the last thing to point out is, because I'm creating an AWS resource that my task is going to need to access, now that's where identity and access management comes into play. I need to have a policy that's going to grant my task access. So I created this policy, and by simply outputting the ARN, so the Amazon resource name, I believe that's what it is, of the my echo goes off when I say that, when I say the word Amazon. So what it's going to do is it's actually going to attach that policy to the task role, which is what my task needs to basically talk to AWS resources. That's where we define the permissions. So that's it. I mean, pretty simple. Anything else you want to add here, FA, that maybe I glossed over?
No, so I mean, this was a great recap of add-ons, right? Like Copilot, by default, it will abstract away all this infrastructure, but you will always have scenarios, just like in your job over here, where you want to integrate with additional AWS resources that Copilot does not provide by default. And you do that through like writing your own little CloudFormation template, dumping it in the add-ons directory, and boom, that automatically gets integrated with Copilot. We parse everything in the output, inject it as either a task role or an environment variable. Or if you're outputting a secret manager secret or a secure string from SSM, those will become secrets. So we'll automatically inject them as secrets.
That's awesome.
And that is a good point. So I did create secrets for this job. And so there is, in the documentation, there is a section on how to create secrets, and it's something that will improve over time. But I created my SSM secure string parameters, and this is the name of those parameters. And by simply referencing them in my manifest YAML, Copilot's going to figure out the rest and make sure that we have the permissions to access these secrets and that they get deployed as environment variables. So I'll get the actual value of that secret exposed as an environment variable to my task. Pretty cool. No secrets.
Super cool. No secrets were harmed.
So really quickly, I just did a Copilot job init. We did this yesterday. And now what I want to do is I just want to run a deploy on my job. Okay, and this is just a scheduled job. Brent, how many servers am I managing here?
So far, 0.
How many servers am I going to manage once I deploy this job?
Still 0. Okay. That's the way we like it. We don't like managing servers. We used to have to do that, and it wasn't fun. So it's nice to not have to do that. And what's happening if you're relatively new to containers or to AWS is we're building in the background. Copilot is taking care of provisioning and building an ECS cluster for us. And that ECS cluster is then going to be used to orchestrate your containers running on AWS Fargate. And Fargate is basically our serverless container platform. So you're going to be able to run your job without having to have pre-provisioned infrastructure that just sits around all the time. So it'll just run, and while it's running, it'll have execution, and then once it's done, it'll go away, and you won't be paying for any infrastructure.
Bingo. And so now I'm going to go back, and we have our API service. So spoiler alert, I'm sorry we deployed this a little earlier, and the reason for that was because we actually have an add-on here. So let's talk again, going back to the concept of add-ons. We have an add-on here that actually creates a serverless Aurora database. Nice. So again, how many servers are we managing? 0.
Now it's 0 and 0.
Yes. So we have a serverless Aurora database cluster. And I mean, it's all defined here in CloudFormation, and we're outputting the endpoint and the secret, which, as you can see here in the comments, these are injected as environment variables to our task via Copilot when it runs.
Nice.
Yeah. And this template is like a great example. If you need to integrate with RDS, you can take a look at this template, because we set up everything securely by default. You can see us creating secrets for your password. It's placed in the private subnets, and everything will be set up with best practices by default.
That's
fantastic.
So cool. And is there an NAT gateway?
No, there isn't for this.
Yes.
All servers and all NAT gateways were harmed in the making of this application. So while my job's deploying, okay, so that's happening there. Let's just do a Copilot service. So again, with Copilot, we talked about this yesterday. We have our application, which encompasses our environments, our services, our pipelines. So I can interact. So, Efe, you mentioned it earlier. From an operational perspective, this is not just a deployment tool, but this is also a day 2 tool where I need to see logs, metrics, data about my services or my jobs. I can do that all through Copilot. So let's actually do, first of all, Copilot.
I don't believe you. Show me.
Copilot service LS. Am I in the right?
I did actually believe you, but now I'm worried.
And now it doesn't work because you didn't believe me. What happened here? Where did I go wrong? Hang on. let's open up a new terminal. I think this is, once again, a user error. Copilot app ls. There we go. So you'll notice the naming of the application, and certain things are going to look weird at first, but I promise you at the end, it's all going to come together. All right. So Brent, as you see this as we go along, maybe you'll start seeing a theme here. Okay.
I sure hope so. Otherwise, I'm going to look bad.
So you can see we have our service deployed, and our job is being deployed as we speak. Actually, just deployed. So we have our backend PU service, and you'll see our application name is in. So there's just, if you fit something in the middle there, you maybe be able to figure it out. So let's actually do Copilot service, and let's actually see the logs. So let's see if anything's going on. So it's listening right now. We have some old, data from earlier, but so nothing's happening at this moment. But what I want to do is I want to tail the logs, because at some point here, I'm going to have a task that's going to come up, and that task is going to be my scheduled job, right, which is the Twitter scraper. And I scheduled it to run every 1 minute. So you can see now in ECS, it's coming up. Here it is, the URL. It's github.com/Copilot Ghostpilot app.
Ghostpilot app.
I don't know if this is private or not. I don't.
No,
think
it's not.
It is.
It's public. Yeah.
So have fun. So let's just take a look at what's going on in my task here. So this is my scheduled job. If it breaks, I'm sorry. I've had it working, and then I break it, and then I think we're good though. So
you guys mentioned this yesterday too, but I think the part that I love the most about scheduled jobs is that it doesn't just run your task; it wraps it with a state machine. So with Copilot, you can, in your manifest, you can set a timeout, you can set retries. And if your task fails the first time with retries, if you say retry it twice, and the second time around, it will trigger it again, and hopefully it will work. So we build in redundancy in some way.
Fantastic. So look, here's now the scheduled job just ran, and it's pulling all Twitter data from yesterday to present, and it's looking for anything hashtagged AWS Copilot. So you can see.
Whoa! I saw me in there.
There you are.
I see R. Jordan in there.
That's our manager.
I see. I see real Adam Keller.
That's me.
I see people.
That's Austin. But yeah, so we're pulling in all the tweets now, and take a look here. One thing I forgot to even talk about was service discovery and communicating with apps within or with other services within our application. So look, this was our first payload that we sent over, which was FA's tweet, which looks like it was a retweet to our backend. And you can see we sent all the data. So
let's look at that name real quick. Backend pu.n.local. Without getting into the name, I know that's part of what you're working up and building up towards. But just talking about service discovery real quick, service discovery on other platforms can be kind of difficult. You have to run your own service discovery service, etc. But on ECS, it's just a simple checkbox that you want to be able to use it, and then it works over DNS. So Copilot actually provisions the private DNS zone on your behalf, .n.local, and then it's just to refer to any of your services. It's service name.n.local. Super simple. Yep. And it works across all of your services.
And so you can see my application is actually sending duplicate data. So the API service is saying, hey, we don't want this. We already have it. So there are some duplicates that come in, but obviously you can see we set that checkpoint value, which means we are able to write to SSM. So that access to that AWS resource was automatically configured and figured out. So yes, if you want to see your name here, you just have to tweet a hashtag AWS Copilot, and then please be nice and just, tweet some emojis. Please don't be inappropriate. That's not cool.
Yeah, our filtering is not robust.
No, right. Like I'm nervous that I even suggested it, but I think we have a nice audience, so we should be okay. And then if you had noticed, I was tailing the logs from the API service, and you can see it stored the tweet data, it received everything, it stored it, and that's it. So our API service is working, and it's gathering the data it needs and storing it in the database. And just for fun, we can also go to the database itself, and I'm just going to query it really quick just to show. Were there funny tweets? I missed them.
Alex Smasha is offering that for a certain price, he can build up a good filter expression for you.
I just didn't have the time. Or did I?
I think, I forget who said it, but I think also Alex, Copilot real MVP. Yes, this is definitely MVP. So, I mean, not Copilot, but the app that we're writing right now is very much like an MVP to get something going.
Exactly. So it looks like, so we had some duplicates. Just trying to see, it looks like there were some errors here, but storing the tweet. Anyways, so we can probably troubleshoot that separately, but regardless, we'll at least be able to see the tweets right now. I'm not sure why we're getting, well, it looks like it's just the error and it's just skipping because it was a duplicate value.
Oh, it looks like it's like some size related issue. Some tweets might be too long and it does not store the very long tweets. We should let our backend engineers know about it.
Yes. Also, how long can a tweet actually be? It's 240 characters. Surely we have the room.
That's a good point. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, no. So it's a tweet, but then if it's a retweet, we also ship the data from the retweet, because the API, when you call the Twitter API, if it's a retweet, it's not going to give you all the content of the retweet. So you have to pull both in. And so that's what you're getting. That's what we're shipping to the service. So let's actually, you know what? I do want to talk a little more about the service discovery, just to explain how we kind of manage the communication. So in our manifest, I basically just set the API endpoint. Oh, what should we tweet? Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Perfect. Yes, there you go. There you go. Sorry. So I have an environment variable that I'm just setting as the API endpoints. This is basically the backend service name. And when we look at my code, as that's still tailing the logs there. Let's see, is it here? So what I'm doing is I'm just basically grabbing that environment variable that's the backend service name that I'm creating. And then I'm using my environment variable that's automatically available to my task from Copilot, which is what's the service discovery endpoint. So I don't have to do anything creative. I just have to access that environment variable, and I know what my service discovery endpoint is automatically within the task. So I just wanted to show that. And then that's it, connecting the two together and making sure they can talk to each other. Copilot manages all of that or builds all of that on your behalf.
So cool.
So let's see. I'm curious the errors here.
So here's a question. I can't pronounce your name. I'm not even going to try. But how can we write custom logs into AWS ECS from the back end? So maybe you could talk a little bit about how are you logging your stuff in your app?
It's a great point. Yeah, so good question. And then FA, as far as integrations, I'll probably pass it to you at some point. But so the way it's working right now is this is Fargate. So I don't have access to the Docker daemon locally like that. These are things I can't configure. But with Copilot and ECS, there's a few different things here, components for logging. One is the AWS logs log driver. So what this is doing is when we launch this task in Fargate, automatically Copilot is creating a log group in CloudWatch Logs. It's obviously creating the permissions to ensure that your task can log there, but that's where all your log output is going. Now, if you wanted to log beyond CloudWatch, that's where something like FireLens or where you could use like FluentBit to log elsewhere, to ship your logs to other locations like Splunk or Kinesis, or I guess really anywhere else that you would want to receive logs.
I just can't wait to see how many of these things you can name.
Right, I could keep going. I could go all day here. But F8, as far as that integration with Copilot, is that something that exists now, or is that something we're looking at for the future?
That's right. So everything that you described is exactly correct. We'll create the log group for you by default, and we'll use the AWS Logs driver to log to ship your logs to CloudWatch. And for FireLens, actually, Copilot provides already like a deep integration with FireLens. So if you, in the docs, if you go to aws.github.io /copilot-CLI, okay, yeah, sure.
I do it the lazy way. I'm sorry.
You go through like many hoops. Cool.
Here we go.
Yep,
that's
perfect.
me.
So if you go under the documentation section over there, we have a page for sidecars under developing, and you can find out how to integrate with the FireLens. So if you just scroll slightly below, we have some like easy integrations with certain specific sidecars, such as Nginx and FireLens.
Nice.
Perfect. So this is just another way. And again, you don't have to have think about running like a daemon set on a server. You can sidecar using FireLens, FluentBit, and then you can log wherever you desire. Alex Smasha, always providing the beautiful stuff. The beautiful outputs.
When he wasn't here at the beginning, I was starting to worry that I might actually have to, type in URLs myself, but he is so good at it. He usually beats me to it anyway. So yeah, I've just gotten used to having him here. He's like, unofficial member of the team now.
Yep. And so what's happening also, by the way, is there's a lot of data that we're going back in time to get. So that's why we'll see a lot of old tweets here, retweets, just different things that have come up.
Are we going back to the beginning of Twitter?
We are not going back to the beginning of Twitter.
Okay, good.
But we're just going a little bit back in time.
Nice. So there's another question. Is it possible to integrate Copilot with Java? And yes. I think the beauty of Copilot and the beauty of containers is that you can run anything in a container.
You reminded me, take a look at our application. So in the real world, you may not have everyone writing in the same programming language. So I'm not a Go developer. I think Go's amazing. I never learned Go. I write in Python. So my service is written in Python, but I'm talking to an API service that's written in Go, and our front end is written in Go. So this is an example of, polyglot programming, where we just have multiple languages in our application. And of course, there could be a Java service here. If you write in Java, I could have written the Twitter scraper in Java and done that. So
that's right.
Yeah, it's entirely up to you.
And you can see that like how with Copilot, just with this example, we have really 3 different services. Well, 2 services and 1 job. And we're really embracing the whole microservice architecture. And with service discovery earlier, we can have our front-end service that just spans out to many different microservices. They all talk to each other through service discovery. So anything that's, with Copilot, we're trying hard to have deep integrations really for making sure that your your containerized microservices work really well with each other.
Exactly. And that kind of leads into this question also, the Lang, I'm guessing. If we would like to start changing existing applications to serverless apps, where should we start? I'm sorry if my question isn't related here. And yeah, I think it is. Existing applications are one of the areas that I think containerization and Copilot can really help with. And if you look at the infrastructure that we are building up here, so far we have a job, we have a back-end service. Tomorrow we'll have a front-end service with a load balancer. All of those things are being run in a serverless way. We won't have a single EC2 instance up and running. We won't have a single SSH port that we can log into and have to patch an operating system or anything like that. So there's a lot of really cool stuff happening in that landscape. There's also, we're planning, this will be a future show, but we have another, on that containerization topic, we have a show planned coming up for how you can get your app that's a Windows app into a container to be able to run. And we have a tool for that called App to Container. So yeah, we're gonna be taking a look at that sometime.
You're too legit to quit. Nah, I'm sorry. That's 90s.
That's
MC Hammer. Sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. You do you. It'll work out.
Thank you. You do you. See, as long as I could do me. That's all. I just want to be me, and I'm crazy. But so speaking on the topic of just how do you start? So look, with containers, I think the barrier of entry compared to maybe like Lambda, I think is a lot. It's easier in the sense if you want to take a lot more and bundle it into a container. Whereas with Lambda, it may be a lot more difficult to bundle a large code base into a single Lambda. Lambda is very much functional programming, very, specific components. It does one thing very well, very microservice focused, right? But you can always, and Brent, we talk about this a lot, is you could do what's, the strangler method, right? Where you have your app, just front it with a load balancer and slowly break off components and take whatever the low-hanging fruit, something that's easy, that's to get you started. Or, sometimes Brent, I feel like I've heard you say, take the hardest use case and bring it in, but take what makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Move it and just start funneling traffic to your microservices as you break apart from your kind of legacy application you're looking to break up.
Exactly. So many monoliths will have the notion of routes that, for this route, go execute this branch of code or whatever. So just go route by route, look at what can stand alone, and then go off and write that as a standalone service, and then break it apart, like Adam said, at the load balancer level, and start sending your traffic over to that service. There are all kinds of approaches that you can take. That's just one. But once you've done that, what you'll end up with, you still might have your monolith around, but it's going to be so simplified, or so, it's going to have far less responsibility. It'll still, in and of itself, it'll become easier to manage. One of the downsides that people don't like about monoliths is they grow to be so complex that if you change something over here, you might break something over there without knowing it. But as you carve off, functions and take away responsibilities from that monolith, it becomes simple again. So, you kind of win both ways.
Yeah.
And with Copilot, the way to approach this would be, if you have an existing application, you would first spin up a load balance web service, create a monolith that's containerized, and then you create these like smaller backend services, and you communicate to those backend services with service discovery, exactly like Adam is doing right now with the scheduled job.
Bingo.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny. Could we substitute shell scripts to launch applications with Copilot scripts or something like that? And I'm wondering if you might be trying to get at building up a CI and then a CD process. And are we still in a waiting pattern? Could we talk about the pipeline functionality?
Yeah, we should definitely do that. So that's a good point. I don't think with Copilot, I think Copilot actually, all the things that you would want to do with bash scripts, I feel like Copilot does for you. And obviously I'm sure there's going to be an edge case that I missed and you're going to call me out on it, which is okay. But the idea is what do you really need to do? You need to build a Docker file into a Docker image, and you need to deploy it somewhere. So Copilot wraps that up for you. And also there's the concept of pipelines, where at some point you should be, especially when we're talking production, you shouldn't be doing this from your Cloud9 instance, from your laptop. There should be a pipeline, and approvals should be done at the Git level.
Yep.
Right? Like
Totally.
you use Git as your approval mechanism. Once that change gets merged, the pipeline handles the rest.
Yep. That's so cool. And then Dallas Marlowe points out, and this is, by the way, super smart guy, so we should listen to what he says. He's also right. Grouping microservices by the data sets they work with is often also a good approach. And yeah, totally. If you can, in the case of a monolith, a lot of times you have just one data set. But if you already have, breaks in your data set, like this part of the monolith goes off and processes an S3 bucket or something in DynamoDB or some other, data store, then that can be a signal to you. Take a look at carving that off, because it's already, the data that it's working against is already carved off. So that can be that. Thank you, Dallas. That's a great idea.
Yeah. So it sounds like Dallas, and Dallas is really smart and good with data.
100%. Yes. James Littleton just felt the need to shout pipelines. It's really loud.
I love pipelines, so I'm with you. Let's shout it, and let's shout it loud and proud. I'm all about the
Absolutely.
pipeline. So to create a pipeline in Copilot, it's actually really simple. And so Copilot has this functionality. It's a command line parameter, Copilot pipeline. And with that, I can initialize a pipeline. I can, and then deploy the pipeline. So it starts with the init, which is always kind of like your first entry point into Copilot, right? FA, like Copilot init.
Right. That's always, yeah.
That's going to get you started with whatever it is you're trying to deploy in Copilot. So if I want to deploy a pipeline, I simply do Copilot pipeline init, and it asks me if I want to add an environment. I do want to add one. And that environment's going to be this MPK environment. And now it's going to look, in my Git. I'm not sure exactly how it figures it out. FA, you could probably tell me that.
Well, you're in a Git repo right now. I checked out Git repo.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, right. So obviously, yeah, thank you. But I don't know if it's looking at my Git config, if it's running a Git remote. I don't know. It's doing something.
Yeah, it runs Git remote. But
perfect.
Locally. Yeah.
So it's checking my remote, and it's basically saying it's all my remotes, and saying which repository do you want to use for your pipeline to trigger builds and deploys. So I simply pick that. I enter my access token, which I do not have right now. So I'm just going to make that up. And it actually generates some manifest files for me. So there's the Copilot pipeline YAML, which this pipeline YAML is basically what's kind of the manifest for defining my pipeline workflow, right? And then there's the build spec, which I guess, I'll ask this in a second, but the build spec is with code pipeline, it actually uses code build on the back end. Code build is just essentially a way to run builds for your pipelines. That is the actual server that comes up to run your automation and then shuts down. So again, pay for what you use. You don't have some worker running 24/7 waiting for jobs to trigger. And that's where you'll define more kind of technical details related to your build deploy process. So FA, my question to you here is, when would I, as someone who's building a pipeline, when would I modify the pipeline YAML, and when would I look at modifying the build spec YAML?
Sure. Can we open both? And that should make it very clear, I think, for users on when I should be modifying either. So with Copilot pipeline.yaml, like you described, this is the shape of your pipeline, right? So for example, at the very bottom, you mentioned the stage. This will be a list of environments. Like in this situation, we have an environment named MPK. In a more real life example, you might have a production environment. You might have a test environment, a QA environment. And for each one of those, you will be listing them in whichever order you want to deploy to. And you uncommented earlier, we provide some additional configuration there, right? Like you could set up a manual approval step as well as adding test commands. So this, with the test commands fields, you can run, for example, integration tests or end-to-end tests, whatever you would like. So that's what it would. Yeah. So the pipeline.yaml file is just the shape of your pipeline. And the build spec, itself is, if you look at the Copilot pipeline, the way it works is that you'll have a build stage, and then you will have these individual stages that you defined in your pipeline.yaml. And the build spec is run in the build stage itself. And the only time that you have to really modify this is you don't need to look at the push build commands at all. This is what we use to really just take your Docker files, called Docker build. So we create a container image, push that to ECR, and that's all it does. In the build commands section, if you want to run any unit tests, so if you want to fail early in the build step itself before building any of the container images or something like it, you could just enter the commands needed there. So like make test, so that would run your unit tests.
Got it. That makes sense. So really, that the build spec for me as a developer, if I want to run unit tests, right, just against my code before we get that image deployed, we want to test or run unit tests. Then the pipeline YAML is where I would define integration tests or kind of post deploy.
Yeah, post deployment. Yep, exactly.
Very cool. So that's fantastic. So basically, the next step, what I would do after this is I would just run a Copilot and pipeline. Saying them together is very hard. I struggle with this. Copilot pipeline update, and this will actually deploy my pipeline. I'm going to do it, but I'm just going to tell you right now, it's going to fail because I don't have the I didn't have the proper value set, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So that's what I would run to have my pipeline deployed. And for tomorrow, I'll deploy and I'll put my proper GitHub API token in there so we can see it work. But that's that. So what we have is so now we're at the point where we have a scheduled job that we deployed with Copilot. So if I just do Copilot job ls, I can see that's again, this is not the actual job, but I have my Twitter scraper job. But you can see if I had more jobs, all my jobs would be listed when I run Copilot job ls. So we have our Twitter scraper job. Our Twitter scraper job is shipping data to our API service. So if I do a Copilot service ls, I can see I have my backend service, Copilot app show, and we can see this. Should I run a status?
Can you run a Copilot service show as well?
Oh, that's what I meant to run. Thank you. That's actually what I meant to run. Thank you.
And
so,
sorry. At the bottom, earlier we talked about add-ons and how anything that you put in the outputs get injected as environment variables or secrets or roles. And over here, you can see when you run Copilot service show after the deployment, you can get the values for whatever you wrote in your outputs, right? For example, we put RDS endpoint as one of our output. That's for our Aurora database. And you can see the URL there for the database.
Yeah, so I was just curious, did we try this? Was it a tweets database? I don't know.
It's Postgres, I believe.
Okay, I think you're right. Wait. I swear, I think select all from tweets. I'm just going to run it really quick to see, show me. There it is.
Oh,
okay, so
nice.
It was updated and we missed it. So
Gotcha.
in the tweets database, you could see here are all the tweets that have now been shipped to our backend service. So we have 25. We could see usernames here. Austin has tweeted quite a bit. There's FA, there's me, Brent. Again, more people tweeting. I don't know who that is. That looks like a new name to me. We got Dallas.
Awesome.
Dallas Marlowe. Look, we got, it looks like Ian, Hercules. There you go. So now we have the audience tweet AWS Copilot. And so FA, maybe you can answer this question. Why did we choose Aurora serverless instead of Dynamo for this example?
Yeah, so actually Copilot provides super easy integration with Dynamo. That would have been like our preferred route if we could, because it's super fast, extremely reliable. I mean, both of the services are great, but in this situation, in our front end service, we want to run a query for aggregating this data, right? Like we want to be able to count and group by, find all the most popular emojis. And for that, RDS, a SQL database, really provides us super easy queries to get that information. And it would have been a lot trickier to model that with Dynamo.
Yeah. So cool. So
Great answer.
That makes sense. That's like we should just take that clip and say like, hey, I'm trying to choose between Dynamo or RDS.
Right.
Here's FA on how to choose the right answer. So, but yeah, so Ian was excited. I saw Ian commented here. I believe this is you, AWS Copilot with this. So now, these are Dallas Marlowe posted. It looks like green people, which is kind of cool. Zombies. Yeah. And then
I'm going to have to step up my emoji game now and go find some zombie emojis.
And then this one here just went all the fun emojis. There's no Halloween here. It's just happy times, which is okay too. But so there you go. So today we redeployed our backend scheduled job for the Twitter scraper. We deployed our API service, which our scheduled job talks to using service discovery, which was all managed and built through Copilot. And we used add-ons for both. And in this example, for the API service, we created an Aurora database, serverless database that we were able to write to. So nice. We saw the results. So tomorrow, it's all going to come together. We're going to put a bow on it. We're going to have our front end that's going to show us, all the emojis and all the data we collected. So pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. So if you're out there and you've been following along, definitely plan to tune in tomorrow, noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And we're gonna get our front end deployed and see which emoji wins.
Oh, and by the way, it looks like there's even a table on that with all the emojis. So wow, this was really well done. We'll go into that tomorrow.
All right, cool. Until then, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you, FA, for being here.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.